epidemic in the U.S. officially tipped, and more black Americans than white Americans were infected. Today, it's spreading fast in a new population, heterosexual black women infected by men with HIV. And that points to a third reason AIDS is out of control in black America. Now, this is something that's difficult to talk about: sex and patterns of sexual behavior among black Americans that contribute to the epidemic. Consider this. Research at both the universities of Chicago and North Carolina has shown that multiple sexual relationships are more than twice as common among blacks than among whites, and among blacks more common for men than for women. This may be one of the most important reasons HIV infection rates are so high among black Americans.
Black people have higher rates of traditional sexually transmitted diseases like gonorrhea, herpes, syphilis, and it's pretty well known that those diseases facilitate the spread of HIV. It makes it easier to get HIV infection or to give it once you have one of these other sexually transmitted diseases.
Once those rates start to rise, it starts a cycle that feeds on itself. Because now, when a person goes to have sex with somebody, the chances that that person's going to be infected already are relatively high.
It turns out this pattern of sexual behavior is driven in part by a staggering demographic reality. There are only 85 black men for every 100 black women of marriageable age. That's because of a complex mix of vexing problems: infant mortality, violence, and disease that all take a higher toll on black boys growing up in America than on any other racial group.
With an imbalance of men and women, men have less of an incentive to stay in relationships. They have more options to have multiple relationships. And that is going to favor transmission of HIV.
This is becoming especially clear in black communities in the South, where, according to the CDC, AIDS is spreading fastest. Places like Williamston, North Carolina.
HIV and AIDS is the new story of the South. It is the new story. It is so disturbing to me when I get another young sister to walk up in this office and say, "Can I talk to you?" And then she pulled me aside and said, "I'm HIV infected."
Donna Latimer runs an HIV counseling center in Williamston, where almost all the new clients are women. That demographic imbalance of men to women is especially pronounced here because unemployment is rampant. Several major factories in the area have shut down in the last few years, and small local businesses can't survive. So most men who can get work somewhere else leave town.
If you implant an African-American male in this community that makes over minimum wage, and women find out about it, I guarantee you at least 50 women are going to go after him, at least.
According to the state health department, black women have an HIV infection rate 14 times higher than white women in North Carolina, and some misguided attempts to avoid the disease, according to Donna Latimer, are making things worse.
I've seen people develop group sex teams because they said that they won't be putting each other at risk because we know everybody, so we can have sex with each other. But what happens when one member of that group is already infected? Then you infect the whole group.
This small clinic, like many in the rural South, is overwhelmed with AIDS patients. Many are women like Kenesha, who says she was only involved with one man, the father of her child. But she tested positive for HIV 3 years ago.
The men that you deal with, you don't trust them because they won't tell you the truth. So I just went and got tested, and when I first found out, I tried to commit suicide.
AIDS is still a shameful but deadly secret in Williamston.
A lot of people died. A lot of them have died around me. Approximately 10 to 15.
It is impossible to know how many here have actually died of AIDS, because often when someone dies of AIDS, the notice in the local paper reports the cause was cancer. The man who Kenesha says infected her also had a wife and other children. He died of AIDS over a year ago.
The epidemic is real, it's spreading. Women, protect yourself because you don't know who that person been with, so just protect yourself.
A warning, but is anyone listening? The shocking reality is that of all women newly infected with HIV in the United States, 68% are black.
If this was about white women, white college students, white youngsters, white anybody, there would be a different response. They used to have a saying that said, silence equals death. Well, if that is still true, then this silence is deafening, and it's saying to us, it does equal death. And for you guys, that seems to be all right.
From the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, men have gotten infected because they have sex with other men. So, a fourth reason AIDS is out of control in black America is what it means to be gay and black. After peaking in 1992, AIDS cases in gay white men have steadily declined. White gay activists, largely affluent and educated, were galvanized into action. From the earliest days of the epidemic, they protested, formed political groups like ACT UP, raised money, and forced policy changes which spanned everything from health insurance to faster FDA approval of experimental drugs.
I think that the governmental response to HIV happens because the people who were dying were white. Because even though they were gay, they were white, and they were male. And the power brokers in America are also white and male. So at some level, there's an understanding that this could be my son, this could be my brother, this could be someone in my life.
But in the black gay community, there has been almost no organized activism, and that's been a significant force in the spread of AIDS.
When you start talking about sex, there's a problem. And when you start talking about homosexuality, it's a real problem. Nobody wants to deal with it. I know a few communities as conservative as the African American community. Extremely conservative, particularly around sex.
Hey, Senior, how many weeks now?
David Mailbranch is an AIDS specialist at Grady Hospital in Atlanta.
How's everything going?
He also studies the social and cultural forces that make life very difficult for black men who have sex with other men.
The image of black male sexuality being somebody who's hyper-heterosexual, big masculine physique, large genitals, all those kind of stereotypes that have come back from the times of slavery, that's kind of wrapped up in what black male sexuality is. Being homosexual or having same-sex desire is not going to be compatible with that.
It turns out that black men who are gay or bisexual sometimes decide to hide their sexual preference. Keeping homosexual or bisexual activity a secret is called being on the down low, or DL. The term refers to a man who presents himself to the world as straight, but has sex with other men and doesn't tell his female partners about it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this hour, the reporting on this crisis began last year by my colleague Peter Jennings. He sat down then with a group of black men in Atlanta, some gay, some straight, some bisexual, all HIV positive. They talked with remarkable candor about the realities of having AIDS in black America.
I had full-blown AIDS, and the support that I thought I would get from my family didn't get it.
In the black community,